Welcome to the Cinema Perspective channel. Early in the year, the TV season is just warming up. Viewers are starting to test the first releases, figuring out which new shows are worth their time and which can stay buried in endless watch lists. 2026 has already delivered several shows you shouldn't just add to your list, you should actually press play. It's a diverse lineup, from a gritty Netflix thriller and medical dramedy to a sports story on ice, mystery, historical detective, prison thriller, and a Yellowstone neo-western. Not all are noisy blockbusters or mainstream hits, but each has a clear reason to watch. Whether it's the cast, the atmosphere, a familiar franchise, or simply a premise that makes you want to check out at least the pilot. Let's kick things off with some serious adrenaline. Netflix takes a familiar title, which many still associate with the Denzel Washington film, and brings us Man on Fire. But it doesn't just rehash the old story. What matters is that this is a new serialized adaptation, and the longer format gives a story more room to explore the protagonist, his past, and the pain behind all that rage. John Creasy isn't your glossy action hero just waiting to make an epic comeback. He comes off as a man with a heavy past, exhausted by the world and the role life forces him back into. His new job in Brazil doesn't seem like a chance for salvation at first. Instead, it feels like another dangerous obligation, another cycle he enters with almost no hope that things will end differently this time. That's exactly why the series works as more than a standard protection or revenge story. The real emotional core is Creasy slowly finding a sense of responsibility again. Creasy doesn't suddenly become warm, healed, and emotionally open just because the plot needs him to. There's too much internal fatigue, guilt, and old pain in him. But when someone appears who actually needs protecting, a purpose starts to emerge in that inner void. It's ugly, flawed, maybe not even healthy, but it feels real. As a thriller, Man on Fire lays its cards out immediately. It is a high-stakes crime-action thriller, packed with street-level tension, chases, brutal clashes, and a city that lives by its own ruthless rules. However, if the series relied solely on violence, it would quickly devolve into just another generic action show. It works best when it shows that the hero's rage isn't a stylish pose, but a direct consequence of trauma and the inability to live peacefully with what has already happened. The cast provides an extra layer of intrigue. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II knows exactly how to play internally broken but highly dangerous men without overacting. Meanwhile, Alice Braga fits perfectly into the emotionally heavy Latin American crime atmosphere of this version. For a show like this, that is vital. The viewer has to believe not just in the action, but in the people caught inside it. The tone here is heavy, the world is cruel, and the lead is not an easy guy to spend an evening with. It's a series you turn on for the tension, but stay for a protagonist trying to claw his way out of his own darkness, even if he does it in the most painful way possible. After such intense darkness, let's pivot to something much lighter. The Best Medicine shouldn't be viewed as just another hospital drama, where doctors sprint down corridors, save patients to dramatic music, and deliver heroic speeches every 5 minutes. The real draw isn't the medicine itself, but a man who seems to know how to heal others while being almost incapable of having a normal conversation with them. The main character is a brilliant doctor who ends up in a small town, which is the perfect trap for this kind of personality. In a big city, you can hide behind your position, your office, your professional reputation, and your habit of keeping people at arm's length. In a small town, that doesn't fly. People quickly start recognizing you at the grocery store, gossiping about you in cafes, and judging you not just as a specialist, but as a person. And human warmth is something our hero severely lacks. He can be precise, observant, and smart. He can spot things others completely miss. But in casual conversation, he sounds as if the patient has personally ruined his day. The series builds most of its comedy around that mismatch. He's surrounded by people who value empathy, attention, and the normal tone of voice, while he's used to solving the problem, not patting people on the head. In this sense, The Best Medicine operates less like a grand medical drama and more like a story about forced connection. The small-town community essentially becomes therapy for the doctor himself. Not in a cheesy way where he becomes the life of the party in 2 episodes, but in a much more awkward, grounded, and believable way. He keeps running into the same uncomfortable truth. Professional coldness doesn't open every door. Sometimes you just need to hear someone out. Sometimes you have to admit you aren't made of steel either. The show's tone is light, albeit prickly in places. The humor stems from the characters, not loud punchlines. One guy is way too blunt, and everyone else is way too sensitive to it. That creates the awkward little spark that keeps good dramedies alive. It doesn't reinvent the genre, nor does it claim to be the TV event of the year. Instead, it knows exactly what it is. A calm, smart, and quietly cozy watch for the evening, especially if you're not in the mood for catastrophes, surgeries, and emotional breakdowns, but rather a story about a man who has to learn to live among people, not just treat them. From small-town coziness, we move to early 20th century Paris, where private tragedy quickly spirals into public scandal. Paris Police 1910 once again presents Paris not as a romantic postcard, but as a city where politics, the press, the police, and private lives mix into a toxic cocktail. This is not the Paris sold to tourists. Here, behind the beautiful facades lie scandals, affairs, shady deals, fears, and people deeply invested in keeping the truth convenient. The premise grabs you almost instantly. Marguerite Steinheil is found tied up in her own bed, while her husband and mother are murdered in the next room. At first, she looks like the victim, but suspicion quickly starts closing in around her. From there, the series becomes captivating, not just for the investigation itself, but for how a single crime transforms into a public spectacle. When newspapers, rumors, reputations, and political interests get involved, the search for the truth stops being a clean process. It turns into a battle over the narrative. Someone wants a sensation. Someone wants to close the case quietly. Someone fears the investigation will drag unwanted names to the surface. And someone else understands all too well that in a city like this, it's sometimes more dangerous to simply be near a crime at the wrong time than to actually commit it. This is where the series truly shines. It doesn't boil down to the standard detective question of who's the killer. It's far more interested in the environment where the truth is constantly warped. Paris lives on a knife's edge. The offices and corridors of power, police chatter, newspaper headlines, and salons where people smile as if they already know how it all ends. The show perfectly captures an era when private lives of public figures easily became weapons, and public opinion could be as terrifying as a court sentence. Morality often speaks loudest here exactly when it's convenient for someone to hide behind it. That is what makes it more than a historical detective story. It becomes a drama about how scandals are built, sold, and controlled. Paris Police 1910 moves slowly, sometimes almost heavily, but that is part of its appeal. Don't expect rapid clues or flashy reveals every 10 minutes. The story works best for viewers who are interested in the machinery around the crime, how the city digests the scandal, how people weaponize the truth, and how the police try to find facts in a place where everyone already has their own convenient version.
Leaving that historical urban grind behind, we move into a world that looks beautiful from the outside, but hides a brutal price behind all that glamour. Figure skating on screen often looks almost like a fairy tale. There's the gleaming ice, the gorgeous costumes, the music, the flawless movements, and the beaming smile after a successful routine. Edge of the Ice is fascinating because it quickly strips away this gloss, showing the other side of the sport, where a few minutes of beauty are pieced together from months of pain, pressure, fear, and a constant fight for your spot. The real question here is not simply whether the heroine wins or loses. That question always lingers in sports dramas, of course, but something else matters more here. What happens when a person's whole life, from an early age, is reduced to a few decisive minutes on the ice? One jump, and suddenly everything is tested. The body, the nerves, self-esteem, the relationship with the coach, family expectations, and the rivalry with those standing right beside you, waiting for you to slip. The series excels at portraying the sport not as an inspiring motivational poster, but as an environment where a dream can simultaneously give life meaning and steal all your peace of mind. The ice isn't just a stage, it's cold, demanding, and indifferent. You can invest years, endure injuries, and survive the pressure, but when the moment comes, you still have to step out and land the element cleanly. Fail, and the very air around you instantly shifts. The most powerful moments in this format aren't necessarily tied to victories. It is much more compelling to watch the characters live in that fragile space between ambition and burnout, to see how the body slowly stops feeling like their own and turns into an instrument that is constantly judged, measured, and corrected. How the dream that originally brought a person into the sport begins to crush them just as heavily as the fear of failure. We see fierce competition, complicated mentor dynamics, the nervous wait for scores, and the constant sense that a deeply anxious inner world is hiding behind that effortless facade. It's a smart choice. After watching a series like this, you look at a beautiful routine differently because you start to feel just how much tension can exist behind a smile on the ice. Even if you have no connection to professional sports, the individual dramatic arcs might feel deeply relatable. And if you enjoy stories about the price of perfection, young people forced to grow up too soon, and a world where success is always one step away from collapse, Edge of the Ice is an incredibly solid choice.
Now, shifting from personal athletic ambition to a much grander scale, we have a story of family, mysticism, politics, and memory spanning several generations. The House of the Spirits is not a show you want playing in the background. You can't just scroll on your phone and expect the plot to occasionally tug at your sleeve. It demands a different rhythm, slower, more attentive, almost meditative. At its core, it follows several generations of a family whose lives unfold against the backdrop of political and social upheaval in Latin America. Yet, what grips you most isn't the scale, but how the series intertwines the mundane with the near mythological. The magical realism here is not treated like an amusement park ride. It doesn't act like an isolated special effect crashing into the drama. It simply coexists with family feuds, silent dinners, love, loss, power, and memory. Because of this, the mystical elements don't pull you out of the story. Instead, they help articulate things that ordinary words often can't. They speak of generational trauma, of fears that outlive the people who held them. They speak of a house where the past continues to live, even when everyone pretends it's long gone. The family here is an uncomfortable space where not everyone is guaranteed protection. It's a place of strength, pain, control, and overly prolonged silences. A major focal point is the clash of personalities. Those who want to rule, those who try to love, those who feel more than they can explain, and those who realize the costs of their decisions far too late. The series slowly shows how one generation's choices become a burden for the next, and how a house can be more than just a dwelling. It can be a vault for memories, grudges, secrets, and unspoken words. The pacing is unhurried, and that is both its greatest strength and its biggest challenge. If you expect sharp twists and a constant barrage of events, The House of the Spirits might feel slow. But if you settle into its rhythm, it operates almost like a family myth. The scenes don't always push the plot forward, they accumulate feeling. The house, the people, the objects, the voices, and the memories all merge into one massive narrative. It's a gorgeous, sensual, emotionally heavy series. Not heavy for the sake of gloom, but in terms of emotional density. It's worth watching when you crave more than mere entertainment, when you want a sweeping dramatic saga you can step into and inhabit for a while.
Let's pivot from magical realism to a series that relies on the raw power of a deeply familiar universe. The Yellowstone universe has long expanded beyond its flagship show, and The Marshals feels like an attempt to translate this world into a more straightforward, gritty criminal procedural format. The franchise name carries real weight here. If you already know these territories, the family wars, the rugged landscapes, and solving problems the hard way, this spin-off instantly carries extra weight. At the center is Casey Dutton, played once again by Luke Grimes, making it the main hook for anyone who followed Yellowstone. Casey is a natural character to follow into a continuation, bringing a connection to the family mythology and the lived experience of a man who knows how quickly the law, bloodlines, and personal loyalty can tangle into a single knot. The Marshals is not a sprawling family saga, but a story about lawmen in a world where the law rarely looks clean or peaceful. Forget the clean case of the week cop drama with a neat ending every hour. The material promises dirty decisions, moral gray areas, a past that claws at the present, and frontier spaces where everyone has a gun, a grievance, and their own version of the truth.
The show is at its most gripping when it highlights the friction between protocol and reality. On paper, these marshals have rules and structure, but in this universe, things are always more complicated. Sometimes you have to make a split-second call or trust someone fundamentally untrustworthy. The law proves to be less of an elegant ideal and more of a brutal grind in a place where civilization hangs on by a much thinner thread than anyone would like. This isn't the freshest or most daring series on the list. It runs the risk of leaning too heavily on a formula we know: stoic men, heavy pasts, terse dialogue, and conflicts set against sweeping vistas. After several entries in this franchise, that tone might feel a bit too familiar, but purely as a watchable concept, it remains one of the strongest hooks of 2026. A beloved lead character and a neo-Western criminal framework inside this chaotic world are strong enough to put it near the top of any watch list.
From the rough justice of the frontier, let's travel to a British story where tension isn't born from violence, but from status, reputation, and uncomfortably long pauses. The Lady moves with an entirely different temperament. It doesn't try to hook the viewer with noise or rapid-fire editing. Everything hinges on restraint, on glances, hesitations, and that distinctly British ability to make a scene agonizingly tense without anyone raising their voice. The protagonist's personal history swiftly becomes fodder for public judgment. Her past, connections, and every public move begin to work against her or become her only means of staying afloat. In this world, it's not just about what you did, it's about how it looks, who tells their version first, and who gets believed. This society runs on reputation, family names, manners, and the art of not saying too much. At first glance, it looks elegant, filled with beautiful homes and composed smiles. But the longer you stay, the clearer it becomes that the pressure here is polite, well-dressed, and absolutely ruthless. Aggression rarely comes out in the open. It's buried in a brief remark over dinner, a cold smile, or the dead silence following a sentence everyone understood, but no one will say aloud. The heroine must constantly read the room to see who's pretending to be an ally, who benefits from her downfall, and why the past doesn't disappear just because people stop talking about it. This is the emotional core of The Lady, trying to preserve yourself within a system where any move can be weaponized against you. You can't just be yourself. You have to police your words, control what you show, and understand why silence sometimes sounds like an admission of guilt. The series hooks you through an atmosphere of absolute control, letting the pressure build quietly, scene by scene. The quieter the dialogue, the more suffocating life becomes in a society where propriety has long been a form of power. Don't expect sharp twists. The show plays things colder and more observantly. Its strength lies in subtext, a muted tone, and characters who leave a lot unsaid. For viewers who appreciate dramas about vulnerability and reputation as a weapon, The Lady is a perfect fit. After the stifling atmosphere of British high society, we enter a more confined and brutal space. The Prisoner is easily one of the most suspenseful series in this lineup. Its power doesn't come from cheap shock value, but from a grounded, primal fear. A person is thrust into a situation where the usual rules no longer apply, forced to trust someone fundamentally untrustworthy. The premise sets a harsh tone immediately. A young female prison officer must escort an inmate whose testimony threatens a criminal underworld. On paper, it's a standard issue duty to transport the asset, but the risks are too high, and the journey quickly turns into a test, not just of survival, but of the ability to discern who is truly sitting in front of you. Refusing to lock itself in cells and corridors, the show drags the conflict into the open. It plunges into a high-speed, dangerous road trip where the boundary between guard and prisoner gradually blurs. The core tension stems from their forced mutual dependence. The officer can no longer view the inmate as just a file, sparking a complex dynamic where fear, suspicion, duty, and survival constantly sabotage each other. The series refuses to romanticize the criminal world. Instead, it explores how rapidly a person loses control when the system fails, leaving them to rely on the exact person they are supposed to keep at arm's length. Casting is everything here, and Tahar Rahim is a major asset. He uniquely radiates danger, exhaustion, and deep moral ambiguity. Because of his performance, the prisoner never feels like a one-dimensional prop. You can't take your eyes off him because you're never quite sure how much to believe him. The Prisoner is a bleak, tightly wound thriller. If you gravitate towards stories where suspense is built through intense psychological chess games rather than just car chases, this is a standout recommendation.
After that suffocating thriller, we move into a much broader, more sprawling epic. A Woman of Character brings us back to the grandeur of the classic family saga. This isn't a show desperately trying to surprise you with a new plot twist every 10 minutes. Its real pleasure comes from watching a protagonist walk a very long road and gradually change under the weight of everything life throws at her. The heroine starts near the very bottom of the social ladder. She has no comfortable head start, no soft safety net, and no world waiting to prop her up. All she has is hard labor, humiliation, other people's rules, and one brutal realization. If she doesn't toughen up, she will simply be crushed. The series is structured as a journey of coming of age, survival, and upward mobility. Yet it avoids any simple romantic fantasy about success. In stories like this, the audience usually senses early on that the heroine won't stay where she started, so the real intrigue isn't the climb itself. What's far more fascinating is what that climb does to her. Ambition can be a lifeline, especially when there are virtually no other ways to survive. But over time, that same ambition hardens into armor. The higher she ascends, the more frequently she has to choose between emotion and calculation, between gratitude and cold utility, between honoring the past and the burning desire to never look back. The series fits beautifully into the high-budget costume drama space. The era, the opulent interiors, the wardrobe, the shifting times, and the small details of daily life. It all matters here, but it functions as more than just pretty background scenery. The external world evolves in tandem with the heroine. Spaces grow larger, clothes become richer, conversations grow warier, yet somehow the loneliness doesn't shrink. This contrast lends the story genuine gravity. Crucially, A Woman of Character doesn't pretend to be a modern thriller dressed in period attire. It unfolds with a steady, sometimes even deliberately classical pace. The value here isn't in speed, but in observing a character being forged over decades through losses, mistakes, betrayals, triumphs, and choices that make returning to her former self impossible. It's a strong, mature drama. It isn't revolutionary or designed for cheap shocks, but it boasts a deeply relatable emotional core. The defining question isn't whether she achieves her goals. The real question is how much of her humanity will be left by the time she gets there.
Finally, let's step into a genre where the serious and the bizarre walk hand in hand. Widow's Bay is easily one of the most intriguing genre benders on this list. Neither a straightforward horror nor a conventional comedy, it balances precariously on a deeply weird combination of the two. It seems funny at first, but the further in you get, the more it feels like laughing might actually be unsafe. A rational outsider arrives in a coastal town rich with local folklore, aiming to attract tourism and impose logic on inexplicable events. The catch? Widow's Bay has zero desire to become normal. The town functions brilliantly as a character, actively resisting every attempt to tidy it up. The harder someone tries to mold it into a neat tourist-friendly spot, the more obvious it becomes that this place has its own rules, its own temperament, and a deeply twisted sense of humor. The show's best moments aren't the outright scares, but watching residents respond to absolute madness with casual indifference. To them, macabre legends are just part of the schedule. For the outsider, this mutates into an unsettling question. What if these locals aren't actually superstitious at all? The atmosphere thrives on contrast. Alongside small-town gossip and sitcom-level awkwardness lies a thick, ancient dread. You don't always need a literal monster. Sometimes, a place that has harbored fears for far too long is more than enough. Matthew Rice is tailor-made for this material, bringing a perfect mix of exhaustion, irony, and tightly wound stress. This plays exceptionally well for a hero trying to act logically while the universe actively argues against the very concept of logic. For those demanding quick answers and rigid horror tropes, this might feel too indirect, as it plays with tone rather than pace. By planting strange details at the edges of the frame, the series constantly makes you second guess. Is this still a comedy, or is it time to start panicking? If you enjoy the cursed small town as a character trope, this is an absolute must-watch. And there you have it, our top 10. From gritty action thrillers and light medical dramedies to a sports drama on the ice, from historical investigations and family sagas to bizarre small towns, a neo-western, and a claustrophobic prison thriller. I love that 2026 is already delivering not just big-name titles, but series with completely different temperaments. There's something to match any mood here. Something for the atmosphere, something for the brilliant casting, something for the comfort of a familiar universe, or just something when you want a solid, well-crafted genre story for the evening. Drop a comment below and let us know which show from this list you'd put at the #1 spot. I'm also curious, do you prefer these roundups of new TV shows, or would you rather see recommendations for movies that are already out in high quality? If you love film and television not as a dry list of premieres, but as a genuine quest to find something truly worth your evening, hit that subscribe button for Cinema Perspective. We've got plenty more great lineups coming your way. See you next time.